Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very powerful show coming right up with special guest shaman-Victoria-Johnson. And she's here today to talk with us about the gift of shamanism in challenging times. Now, Victoria is a shaman, teacher, and writer, and her passion is in assisting her clients and students in reclaiming their original grace and destiny in order to create courageous new stories. Her work draws from ancient traditions of shamanism, myth, and energy medicine, as well as cutting-edge science and conscious evolution practices. So let's welcome to the show, Shaman Victoria.
Thank you, Marianne. It's great to be here.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. And I know you from other people. We've been kind of chatting for some time, and you're highly gifted in what you do. And my goodness, you've got such an amazing background as well. And before we get really into all the great gifts that shamanism has, especially during these challenging times, I would love for you to share with us a little bit about your background.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I started out in law enforcement, actually. I worked for the Justice Department for about 10 years. About 4 of those were as an FBI agent, and 6 of them were as a federal prosecutor with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
A pretty amazing background. Was that when you look at that and then making the transition into shamanism, you know, a lot of people are like, well, how did that even happen? How did you even get from being this, really, this federal employee, and here you work with the FBI and prosecutors? Like, how did you get from that to finding the path that you're on currently?
Well, it's been a very interesting journey. In many ways, I feel like I've lived a few lifetimes in this one. And my desire always in being a lawyer, going to law school, and working in the Justice Department was really about service. It really came from that desire, and it's really the same desire that I work with all the time now is wanting to be of service. So, but I entered the Bureau and actually probably was maybe one of 5 or 6 people, 5 or 6 women in a class of 30 people. And it was a very masculine environment. There were really, really great people there. There was really wonderful work. But it really caused me to sort of overdevelop that masculine aspect of myself. And then I moved over to the U.S. Attorney's Office and a couple of different divisions there, having long hours. You've heard the story before. Everything seems to work until one more thing is added. And for me, that was getting married and the birth of our son, all of the things that had been sort of precariously balanced before in my life, all the long hours I was able to manage, all of those things up to that point were working until they weren't working anymore. And having a child and being in a wonderful, loving relationship really opened up the opportunity for me to be more in my feminine energy and also to begin that journey of my own personal healing. So that started with acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I received sessions, and they really supported me and helped me to find a balance inside of myself that I had not been able to find before, and to also work through some things that I was getting run down from the long hours, all of my commitments and responsibilities, and it helped to bring me to a place of inner balance, inner calm, and it helped me to see how my life was, as someone said many years ago, a colleague of mine who left the private practice of law, moving into the U.S. Attorney's Office, said, I realized this was no longer the prelude to my life. It was my life. Every day it was going to be the same thing, get up, rinse, and repeat. So I began this process of having acupuncture treatments and Chinese medicine, which really helped, and eventually it led to me going to school to become a traditional Chinese medical practitioner, where I received a master's, and that really was that beginning of the path toward shamanism. Several years later, I realized that there was a deeper way, really, to work, and that became, it was finding out about shamanism. So I really began to delve into that practice and learned a lot about it and started training. And it is some of the deepest, most profound work I think I've ever experienced personally and have seen with clients, from the feedback. It's beautiful work.
And we've had many discussions, and I know how profound working with you is. For those that are new to shamanism, why don't you explain a little bit of what that is like? Because I think a lot of times people get confused about that and figure, to be a shaman, you have to be an indigenous person in Peru.
Absolutely. There are many, many people who have trained with indigenous shamans in Peru and other foundations that are here in the States, and it's actually very much a part of the prophecies of the Karo shaman. They believe that somewhere around the time of 2012, which we've heard a lot about over the years, right, that there would be a returning back to the place of the feminine on the planet and a place of more balance, and that out of this sort of churning and this rebirthing would be a time of peace and harmony. So as far as where we are, we're really kind of in the midst of all of that right now. So I was very drawn to the Karo shamans because there's so much about love, and there's so much about, which they call unconditional love, is called munai in this tradition. Munai is one of the heart-centered practices of this group, and it's about love and reverence for the earth, Pachamama, and it is about bringing our life into balance and working some of the deepest places. So the training that I took actually was with a group called the Four Wind Society. It's here in the U.S., and it is also, the founder of that felt very called to bring forth the tradition to the North Americas, which was also part of the process of the condor-eagle prophecy is what it's called, where the eagle of North America would fly with the condor of South America, meaning our traditions, our medicine traditions would be shared. And they generously shared their medicine traditions with us. So many people have followed that path. And it is beautiful medicine in the sense that it's alive with archetypes. And much of the journey is about helping another person reclaim their own soul's journey. The idea is that we sometimes, because of our life histories, because of our family histories, because of other lifetimes, depending on how you feel about that, have brought forth into this lifetime energies that no longer serve us, that really that have us not operating in our destinies or being in the fullness of our soul's purpose. So the idea is to go in with various pieces of work, with interventions, sometimes ceremonies, sometimes initiations, to help the person who comes to you find that beautiful place of soul's purpose again. So there's several different interventions that I could speak about if you'd like. But overall, in general, shamans work at that energetic level, that place where things have not formed yet, or perhaps we can move back in time to work a piece that's already occurred, a place perhaps where the person lost their way, or we can move forward in time to work with the energy of what has not happened yet. So we work at the level of energy, and then we attempt to give the person a bigger map of who they are so that they can see themselves in the glory and the hugeness of their soul's purpose, where they can really be an effect in the world in a very powerful way. So that is really the purpose of every session, is to work at the energetic, to map at the mythic, a new map, and then to help them find a way to ground this work through homework and assistance and supports so that they can bring it forth at the level of the physical and also at the level of the emotions. So it's not therapy. We don't work at the level of emotions. Therapy is a great addition, to the work, but the shaman is really working at that place of changing the perception, changing the energetic blueprint of the person so that they can shift and move beyond perceptions that they came in with, or that have been the limitations of their families or their maybe the belief systems that have been part of their consensual reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And it's interesting how this can work in our lives pretty much at every level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And some of the interventions, when a client comes, so often they're talking about wanting to find clarity in their lives, or perhaps their life has taken a turn at some point here or there where they thought, things are really moving along really, really beautifully until this happened or that happened. And what happens is our energy field actually can shift because of a trauma. It can shift because of a death in the family. What ends up happening is that on the blueprint, which is this beautiful luminous orb surrounding the body, it can cause an imprint when these kinds of things occur. And that imprint lands first on the energetic body and then sort of finds its way into the physical body. So we want to work on the energy body to be able to shift that. And it's a really, illumination is one way to do it, where we work directly on the chakras. And when we've had these kinds of situations happen, our chakras, which normally spin in a particular direction, stop spinning and they stop bringing life in. So we can actually become stalked by lifelessness, where it's difficult to manage the energy, to find the energy for those things that mean the most to us. So going in and doing this illumination process on the chakras actually can help to bring that balance back in, to bring that life back in. And then there are other energies that sometimes need to be released from the body that aren't even ours. If you think about, as we're sort of in a very intense time right now, where there is dissension and conflict and cynicism present. It's not the only thing those are not only the only things that are present, but they can cause us to also shut down. And thought form energy can actually attach to the body, and so there are ways to clear that. There's ways to clear energy of someone who's passed away that is attached to a person, or unhealthy cords between people. So those are some of the things that we do. We also do soul retrievals and destiny retrievals and the great death rites for people who are actually in the process of passing away. And that's some of the most beautiful healing work that you can experience, is being in that place of helping someone to set their luminous energy field free from the body before they die.
So that way they're prepared for all that. Well, and I know that you talk about how the recent Me Too movement is something that we can see that's kind of been ushered in by, the return of the feminine. And a lot of that is something that the indigenous teachers have been talking about.
Absolutely. This prophecy talks about the great turning over, or the great mulching, and that is that place of the return of the feminine to the earth, and to the reverence of the feminine once again. So what we're seeing right now is, in many places, it's in the entry of women to politics, in the Me Too movement, and also in the beautiful way in which young men are claiming their inner feminine, and perhaps being a sole caretaker of a child, or being the one predominantly who stays at home and takes care of the child. We're seeing it in a lot of different places. The Me Too movement is one of them. It's really that rising up of the feminine energy, that beautiful life force energy that says, this is my truth. And when movements like that are birthed or born, sometimes it can be chaotic or misunderstood in the beginning, but it's a very powerful assertion of that feminine. And It's all part of that place of us coming back into balance. So I love being able to view what's going on right now as a birthing process. We don't even really know, I don't think, what we are birthing, but it's coming from a place of more equality. It's coming from a deep place of our human heart's call, and I'm very excited to see what's going on and what's possible now.
Yeah, I know a lot of people talk about this being, regardless what one's belief systems are, that this is kind of a very chaotic time, that we're going through real big challenges, not only as a nation, but a lot of people even feel that personally, like things are just unbelievably ridiculously hard. So it's interesting to see how shamanism can help kind of, as you were talking, kind of balance that in ourselves.
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons why we are all so triggered, and because there's that place of the heart that knows that there is a good bit of unfairness that we're seeing right now, but sometimes we add on top of that the triggers that come from our own unhealed issues, that matter that has not been investigated before or has not been supported. Perhaps we've all been on that wheel a little bit of, becoming an adult and stepping into a job and finding success and, not really ever having that opportunity to investigate what our story is. What do we have a limiting story? Do we have a mythic story? Are we held back because of our limiting beliefs? Are there stories in our family that say, we can't do this, or you can't do this, or this is the way it has to be done, or who do you think you are? A lot of times what we're working with in the sessions really is our ancestor work. It's all those stories that have held our ancestors captive to the point that they can become actual ancestor curses that really impede us from stepping into the fullness of our humanity. And clearing those can really help us to find that peace. The other thing is that sometimes I think we can feel absolutely overwhelmed about where we can help or how we can help with all of the places that are calling our attention right now. And the beautiful thing about this work is that it can give us clarity. It can really help us define our soul's purpose. It can help us to really hear that clarion call of the soul above and beyond all the other voices that vie for our attention.
It does seem at times that we've got quite a bit chatter going on, especially during the times that we're living in now. I mean, it's like everything's being kind of screamed at us in some ways. And so it's nice to be able to work on our inner peace and kind of bring that back to center with shamanism if you're feeling so out of balance. Because, if you get too focused on it, I think it could really kind of throw you off into the bushes.
Absolutely. And, there is that place where there is justifiably anger right now, but really being able to work with that, to find ways to work with that inside of a session or inside of shamanic work so that energy can really be channeled in the right direction and in a direction that's really going to be of service in the world.
Mm-hmm. Move it forward. Well, and so when we look at, kind of the awakening of the feminine, you talked about just some of the chaos, and we're birthing this, whatever this is going to be, we're going through this change, and we're, as a consciousness, we're having this birth or rebirth. What else can we expect will happen with this kind of a change?
Well, there in the prophecies, the discussion is about the fact that we really want to be able to find our stillness in the chaos, to find our hummingbird courage. One of the archetypes that is associated with one of the directions, the north direction of this work, is the hummingbird archetype. And that is that place that pulls us forward no matter what the current outlook is, what the morals are, what's considered the consensual reality. It's that place that holds that myth above everything else. And if we can really focus on that, if we can always find that stillness and always remember who we are at the soul's level, as more and more of us do this, it's amazing to see how quickly things can shift on a dime, how what might have been a chaotic situation can come into calmness and centeredness as more and more people are holding this energy and holding this vision of the world that we all are dreaming in, as much as we are dreaming it in this new world and birthing this new world. There will also be the deathing of the energies that no longer serve and that have been part of our culture for thousands of years. So I think we'll see both. We'll see chaos and we'll see stillness. It's that part of the life and the death and the rebirth cycle as we move into these times even more. But we'll also see more and more visionary leaders stepping forward, I believe. People like the young ones that are, especially the women that are being called into politics right now. And, the old adage is that you give the job to a young person because they don't assume it's impossible. They don't know it's impossible. They don't hold that vibration. So I think we're going to see a lot more younger ones stepping into their power and helping to birth this new time as well. We're already seeing it in politics with even the most recent primaries and also people who are speaking out about their vision for the nation in the U.S., their vision for the planet, their vision for the world. And more people holding the vision is going to really strengthen it and call it forward even more.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting to see some of these changes take place because it really does mean that there is going to be a massive shift that happens with it.
Absolutely. It's a very exciting time to be here as well.
On that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with shaman-Victoria-Johnson on the gift of shamanism in challenging times. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Shaman-Victoria-Johnson, and we're discussing the gift of shamanism in challenging times. Now, Shaman Victoria, one of the questions I have, we've discussed shamanism and some of the myths. Why don't you share with us a little bit about some of the ceremonies as well?
Oh, absolutely. This is such a beautiful practice. There are several. There is one practice one ceremony called the despacho, and that's with a D. It sounds like gazpacho. It's a despacho. And if you've ever seen a Caro elder do a despacho, it just is one of the most magical ceremonies. There's several different kinds, but the one that I'm primarily speaking about is called an Aini despacho. And Aini is a place of, what it means is being in a right relationship. It's like having no enemies in this world or the next. And there are ways that our honoring of rites of passage, the seasons, in which we do the despachos, and it's always about bringing in balance. And it's done with, in Peru, it's done with coca leaves. In the U.S., we use bay leaves and all kinds of ingredients, and we basically build an envelope of dreams where we feed the earth. It's often given over to the earth, either in fire or it's buried later, but all sorts of grains and chocolates and candies and wine and flowers. I mean, it's the most luxurious, fragrant opportunity for prayers. The prayers are actually blown into kintus, which would be 3 or 2 leaves, depending. And our prayers are for balance in our lives, in our families, in our work, in our travel, in our health, in our business, in our world. And there are actually 6 or 7 ones that we do traditionally. But prayers to bring balance into the world, into our lives. And they're very potent. I can remember doing one many, many years ago where I was working with a person, and they were wanting to put their house on the market, and they did the despacho ceremony, and just a few days later, their house sold. So it's about bringing things into balance in a way of opening up our next adventure, opening up our next travel, giving us energy and a push on the journey. So they're quite lovely. After they're done, they're folded up. It's actually a big piece of white paper with all of these prayers, and the vibration of it in the room when it's done is really powerful. It's folded up, and it's wrapped up in usually one of the Caro cloths, and then the participant's field is actually cleansed with it. And then later it's taken to the fire, it's buried. And the idea is that within a few days, things are turned over, and we begin to see answers to our prayers. So it's it's just a gorgeous way of working and making offerings to the Mother. So that's a despacho ceremony. Yeah.
Sounds like a very beautiful ceremony to be a part of. And when you do these type of ceremonies, do you have people that are also kind of, there personally watching, or is this more of a very private thing that happens?
No, it can actually be done in a group of people. It can be done one-on-one. It really depends on the purpose. They're also done on the solstice usually, or the equinox. For the Caro, they were times of celebration, rites of passage, bringing in the crop, having the harvest, weddings, actually. And then there's a specific kind that's done when a person dies. It's actually not called an Aini despacho. It's called an Aya despacho, which is around, you want to be able to help the person ascend, to move through all of the changes that they're going to be moving through in their transition. So it's actually a celebration of the person's life. Often photos are used, and it's a really wonderful way to not only help the person who's in the process of dying or has died, but it's a beautiful tool to help those that are grieving. It's used quite frequently in our work. Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds really.
And the other ceremony that I'd really like to talk about is the Great Death Rites, which is something that we don't really. Sometimes in the West, we realize that we don't honor. We don't face death very well. We run from it. It stalks us. And one of the shaman's tools really is about when they step on the shamanic path is to really face their death, so that it doesn't become something that they're constantly running away from. And with the death rites themselves, it's a gorgeous way of being with someone and really being with someone when they're in the process of dying, helping to speak with family members, helping to help them let go of the person, give them permission to die, and to, while the person is in the process of dying, if they're able to do it, to begin this process of recapitulation where they talk about their lives as a journey. And it's such a beautiful way of having closure for everyone. And when the person has passed away, there is an energetic ceremony for releasing their luminous energy field from the body, so that they can move on in their transition and not be earthbound, not be caught here. So that's one of the most profound ways to work. I was, many, many years ago, I had a dear friend who was one of my mentors on this path, and she ended up passing away. And I still hold her ceremony and the way that her community rallied around her. There was she was cremated. There was a green process for handling her remains. Her body remained at home. We all did a despacho for her in a sort of a non-traditional Karo way, as we were working with celebrating her life. And the death rites were a very big part of that, where one moment before I did the death rites for her, and I was very, very deeply honored to do this, she was there and there was a lot of grief in the room. And then once the death rites process was done, where the chakras actually are unscrewed and the field comes off the body and it is moved through the top of the head and up to the heavens. So from one time of being very sad and heartbroken about what happened, to when the field lifted and when it left the room, people were just celebrating her and releasing her and loving her on her journey. It's so deeply healing.
That's such a beautiful story, and it's nice for people to understand how shamanic practices can be used in their lives. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not something that's just used for a one-off ritual. It's something that can be used almost like on a daily basis, right?
Absolutely. It can become a way of life that is so vibrant and so present to whatever is going on with life in any given moment. You know, there are despacho ceremonies that you can do for the birth of a child. There are despachos for weddings. There are home clearings and land clearings that can be done that people don't always think about. This is especially true where the land or the home has been traumatized through a lot of different means, but war, battles, those kinds of places hold a lot of leftover energy from the time of the battles. Mm-hmm. I did a land clearing in Concord, Mass. several years ago where the family members there were having difficulty sleeping. The daughter was waking up screaming. And there was this sense of certain places in the home that that did not feel good, that had holdover energy. And so the clients flew me to Massachusetts, and I spent the weekend working with them to clear the home. And there were lots of different ceremonies used. Fire ceremony is one of those things that we did. And what ended up happening, and they also needed to be empowered to learn how to do this fire ceremony for themselves so they could keep things clear. But what came up in that situation was a lot of holdover energy from the Revolutionary War. They were not very far from where it actually began. And some energy around the home as it had been, my recollection is that there had been some sort of difficulty inside of the family or inside of the home before. So it was just holdover energy, and this was a beautiful family. So we did the work, and we did some personal work with the family as well, and it shifted everything. They were at the point of really wanting to leave and sell this beautiful property, and they came to fall in love with it all over again after the work. So those are some of the things that we don't normally think about that shamans do. And then on the sort of new moon and full moon, fire ceremonies are available where we gather, and in fact we did this on solstice just recently, where groups gather that do this work. And let me just say that it's very inclusive. You don't have to be someone who follows this path or necessarily even, goes and finds a place to go find shaman work. It is, you can go to a fire ceremony, and you generally bring things that you wish to release at the fire that are causing heaviness in your heart. And there are also opportunities to call in those things that you want in your life, to actually dream into your life. And there are ways to honor the earth while you're doing the work, and also to call the ancestors in that are in need of healing on the property. So this is actually another way, as I mentioned before, of clearing property as well. So there are a number of different ceremonies that and rituals that are so accessible to people.
What if you have somebody that feels like they have a heavy heart? Because, I've actually run into a lot of people that have this going on right now. Where I've had friends come up to me and go, gosh, I just feel sad, and I don't know why. And so when you have something that you're not really able to identify where that's coming from, is that something that can be helped with this too?
Yes, because clarity is definitely one of the things that one can find. And so it's understanding possibly where it came from and why it happened, which is sort of at that place of the mental. Our mind wants to understand. And then there's also that opportunity to shift it, because that sadness shows up in the energetic field as imprints or dark spaces, places from the past. Sometimes people will share with you because they know part of where the sadness comes from, and sometimes they don't share it. But it doesn't really matter if they know or not, if it's something that they wish to release and bring forward. Shamanism is a wonderful way of going about that. I would say that often clarity happens, it occurs after the work. Sometimes a person will get up and they go, wow, I feel really better. But they can't really articulate or reach why or what has happened. And then I'll receive a phone call maybe a week later, and then it's all these ahas. That understanding follows. So the energy work happens first, and the understanding follows.
Yeah, they're able to kind of identify where that's all coming from, where it fits in their life, going, gosh, things maybe feel lighter here, or these things aren't bothering me as much.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, one of the things that I get really excited about, because I've seen it happen over and over again, is our ancestors, coming into right relationship with them is so important. There's so many different times and places in which our tendency in the West is sort of to throw them on the trash heap and say, there but for the grace of God go I, or, boy, I'm not going to do it that way, and consequently my life becomes the anti-ancestor plan, So one of the ways in which we do work with the ancestors here, both in the medicine wheels, which I teach, and the processes that I do with clients, is to come into a place of right relationship with them as well, to really find a way to honor their gifts, even as we are able to pull their energy and their cords out of our field. So it's a releasing of their attachment to us and our attachment to them, but at the same time honoring those gifts. It's like, wow, I remember my grandmother. I didn't know her very well, but I just remember how lovely she was every time I was with her, and how loved I felt and how enveloped I was by her. How, when she made biscuits, like my grandmother made, it was love on the plate for me. So there are ways in which we come into right relationship with them. And the lore says that when we work with our ancestors, we're working 7 generations forward and 7 generations backwards. So what we begin to see when the ancestor work is done is how freed up we are to live our own life, and how freed up our children are, and how freed up those that are behind us are, even whether they're here or whether they're not here. The relationship with our elders changes in such a powerful way, and with our children as well.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because a lot of times I've heard people talk about ancestral curses, and you kind of brought that up. You mentioned that a little bit earlier, and I'd love for you to kind of share what that means, because I think a lot of times people, they hear it and they're like, "Ooh, that sounds really bad. Good thing I don't have one," and not really realizing that maybe they have something similar going on.
Sure. I mean, in many cases, we only have gifts from the ancestors. I mean, many people are blessed with that. So they're not in every situation, but sometimes it can come up in places that our ancestors have, ways in which our ancestors have lived their lives. Sometimes I've had clients that whose parents were killed in violent ways, or ancestors who were not the nicest people in the world. They had practices that were not very humane. Perhaps they were slave owners back in the lineage. Sometimes it can be something as simple as an illness that passes through the lineage, where if you think about those families that comment, all of the males in the family have X, Y, or Z disease, or all of the males in the family die before the age of whatever. It can be health issues as well that we think about as being hereditary, and there are many, many different ways that this can show up. Sometimes it can be that lifelessness that we talked about before, where, it wasn't as if there was really anything terrible going on. Our ancestors were decent people, but maybe they were beaten up by life. Maybe they had really, really hard scrabble times. Maybe they were part of the Depression era. And that sort of part of their life of sort of being able to dream or to bring life in has been diminished, that they're not able to call forth the energy to create something different. So it's that lifelessness. And sometimes when our ancestors have experienced something really traumatic, there's this constant, be careful, don't dream too big. And I think in my family, the belief system that came through the ancestors, was don't make yourself a target on the horizon line. And that comes from a very real survival instinct inside of all of us, from the limbic brain and from the reptilian brain. But it's not something that we need to worry about necessarily in these current times as we did, say, when our ancestors were in the 1700s or the 1800s. So it's being able to free up through the techniques, through the interventions, and through the remapping of someone's life can both honor the ancestors and release those quote-unquote curses from the family.
Well, and so this leads me to ask, I think a lot of people think that this needs to happen in person. And is that true, or is this something that can be done at a distance?
No, it can be done in person. It can be done from a distance. It can be done over Skype. It can be done over the phone. It can be done with after a big, short conversation with the client, with both of us hanging up and doing the work in non-local time. I mean, this is a place where many modalities work that way now. I mean, I know Reiki and Healing Touch are a couple of them that I can think of off the top of my head. Shamans work that way as well, because we're not working in this place of the present. We're working in non-local time. And one of the beautiful things that I love about working, whether in person or over the phone, is that every time we open up sacred space, which is a big part of the practice, we're calling in all of this information and knowledge about the person and about holding the person. It's coming from all of the archetypal energies, the place of the ecosphere that we call in when we do a sacred prayer to open space. And when we open our Wiracocha over the client in local or non-local time, we're opening up that noosphere, which is that very fine, high vibrational energy where we can hear the advice of the ascended ones and the angelic beings and the lineage that we work with. So we are so surrounded and helped by not just whatever is going on, but we're also helped by the assistance of the person's allies. So it's an information field. It's a healing field that is created, and it really allows us to track, to vision, to see, and to hold the person as if they are here on a table in front of us as we do our work.
Well, and you talked about a lot of different things that shamanism can help people with. We've covered a lot. And one was energy medicine, soul retrieval, and destiny retrieval. Right. And I am very curious, what is destiny retrieval? What is that?
Sure. May I talk about soul retrieval also really quickly? I don't think we covered that, and it's it's generally something that comes before the destiny retrieval in order to make sure that the destiny retrieval really gels for the person. The soul retrieval is where a part of ourself has left us, and sometimes when a person presents with this, what they're going to say is, I remember feeling just audacious and just so positive and so energetic and so excited and happy in my life until some particular event occurred or where there's a trauma. And what ends up happening is that the healed part of the self actually goes to the underworld, which the shamans in this tradition hold as basically it goes back to the belly of the mother to wait for us until we're ready, until we're healed enough to bring that part back. It's sort of a very wise part of this cosmology. And so what we want to be able to do is to do preliminary work so that the person can really be able to receive this part and to take care of it and to nourish it and to reclaim all the other gifts that go along with it. So the soul retrieval is that about bringing that part of the self that has gone away. So it's very much like a reunion for the person.
Mm-hmm.
And when it goes away with gifts. There's certain instinctual qualities that part had. There are gifts, and there are also power animals that are associated with it that we want to bring back, and we also want to help that person make a new contract for the life that they're living with the soul part that's now home. So it's a beautiful part of the practice. And the destiny retrieval is something that we would do. Sometimes people come in with their destinies intact. They know who they are, and they're on track for it. But perhaps because of some of the things that we've talked about that can happen in life that are traumatic, their destiny will be derailed. So personally, the way I see the destiny is that it really is our soul's calling to step fully into what we came here to do, and to offer up that love and that compassion and that service to the world. So the destiny retrieval is really about going, it's a journey to the upper world. Sometimes the soul retrieval is all that's needed because it can reroute the destiny. When you bring the part back, the energy's back to stay on track. And then sometimes it's necessary after the soul retrieval to do a destiny retrieval, which is traveling to the upper world to find that beautiful destiny that has awaited us all of our lives, and to bring that back to the person, to blow that into the chakra, and then to offer them supports in how to bring this in and call this forward. So it can be very powerful as well, especially for someone who has experienced illness, and perhaps that was one destiny line that has been in flow, and then to bring in new destiny lines that can help strengthen the physical body, can help them make decisions about strengthening the physical body. So it's all very much part and parcel of helping them claim their soul's journey again.
Yeah. Well, and so if someone's looking to book an appointment with you, how do they go about doing that? I'm sure, because I know you do events and you have all these great things going, I'm sure you're very busy. But if someone's to kind of inquire about that, where can they start?
The first place to start really would be to just come to the website. My website is condor-journey.com, and there's a contact page there, and my information is there. I would always invite people to take a look at the website, to see if it feels just at the place of complete intuition and place of the heart, if it feels like a really good fit. And if it does, from what they've read on the site, to please, just feel free to reach out to me, and, to fill out the form on the contact page, and I will get back to them by phone or email. Also, just to call my office line, which is listed on the site as well. Yeah. And it's great to have an opportunity to I always spend a few minutes with a person, really making sure it's the right fit for them. Sometimes counseling is a better fit. Sometimes a different shaman is a better fit, depending on the specialty needed. And so it's always good. I spend, 15-minute free consultations with folks just to say, let's talk about what's going on with you, and let's see if this is if it feels right for you. And then we move forward from there, making an appointment and beginning our work.
So, and if they don't know which thing they need to have an appointment for, you can help them navigate through that, right?
Well, absolutely. There's some sort of standard things that apply. Usually when someone is coming for the first time, they may say, I'd like to do a soul retrieval or I'd like to do a destiny retrieval, but there is foundational work that really is in their best interest to have before that, if they've never worked with a shaman before. Sometimes I work with a lot of healers and people who are shamans in this work as well, and they may call and say, I would really like to look at a destiny retrieval, and sometimes that happens right away because they've done the foundational work. So the illumination work is always pretty much a part of every session, and that's where the chakras are cleaned and repaired and illuminated, and then so having that opportunity to explain that it's part of a process, just like we book with a massage therapist or we're booking with an acupuncturist, and we'd like to work on something that has been in our lives for a while. There's always a bit of a foundation that needs to be laid before the deeper work can be done.
And move forward. Okay. Well, Victoria, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, thank you. It's been great. Every time I talk about this work, I fall in love with it all over again. And thank you for your great questions, by the way.
Thank you, Shaman Victoria. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you and to talk about the gift of shamanism in challenging times. If you'd like to reach out to shaman-victoria-johnson, you can at her website, condor-journeys.com. We'll have it listed right here below. Feel free to click on it. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.